King Charles III rejects HRH passports. Royal rift erupts into constitutional crisis. A storm is building at the very heart of the British monarchy, and this time, it is not just another headline, not just another passing controversy, but something that many are now calling a turning point in royal history. At the center of this unfolding drama is King Charles III, a monarch still defining his reign, now facing explosive claims that he has refused to grant HRH-designated passports to his own grandchildren, Prince Archie of Sussex and Princess Lilibet of Sussex. What might sound like a technical or bureaucratic issue has rapidly transformed into something far more serious, far more symbolic, and potentially far more damaging than anyone could have expected. Because in the world of royalty, nothing is ever just paperwork. Every title, every designation, every decision carries weight, history, and meaning. And when that meaning is questioned or altered, the consequences can ripple far beyond palace walls. The idea that Archie and Lilibet may not receive passports reflecting the HRH title is being interpreted by many not simply as a procedural choice, but as a deliberate signal, one that touches on identity, legitimacy, and the future position of Harry and Meghan's children within the royal structure. To understand why this moment feels so explosive, you have to look at the deeper context, the layers beneath the surface. Since stepping back from royal duties in 2020, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have existed in a complicated space, still carrying their titles, still deeply connected to the monarchy by blood, yet operating outside of its traditional framework. Their departure was not just a personal decision, it was a disruption, one that challenged long-standing expectations of duty, hierarchy, and loyalty. And ever since that moment, there has been an unspoken tension, a sense that the relationship between the Sussexes and the institution they left has never fully settled. Interviews, public appearances, media projects, each one adding new layers to a story that continues to evolve. But even against that backdrop, this latest development feels different. It feels sharper, more structural, more consequential. Because this is not about interviews or public perception anymore, this is about recognition at the most fundamental level. In royal terms, the HRH designation is not just ceremonial. It is a marker of status within a centuries-old system, a system where hierarchy is carefully defined and deeply protected. To be HRH is to be formally acknowledged as a senior member of the royal family, to carry a certain weight not only within the United Kingdom, but across the world. So what happens when that recognition appears to be withheld? What message does that send, not just to the public, but to the family itself? Some observers believe this is part of a broader vision long associated with King Charles III, the idea of a streamlined, modern monarchy, one that is smaller, more focused, and perhaps more controlled. It is a vision that has been discussed for years, even before he ascended the throne. A monarchy that reflects the realities of the modern world, where public scrutiny is constant and expectations are shifting. But even those who support that vision are now asking difficult questions. Because Archie and Lilibet are not distant relatives. They are direct grandchildren of the monarch. By traditional standards, their place within the royal structure would seem clear. And yet, if these reports are accurate, that clarity is now being challenged. Others see this not as a matter of modernization, but as a continuation of a deeper, more personal rift. A rift that has never fully healed, one that has evolved over time, sometimes quietly, sometimes very publicly. In this interpretation, the passport issue becomes something more than policy. It becomes a symbol, a reflection of unresolved tensions, of boundaries being drawn, of relationships being redefined. And then there is the question of what this means for the children themselves. Archie and Lilibet, still so young, have become central figures in a narrative they did not create. They are not making decisions, not giving interviews, not shaping public discourse. And yet, they are now at the center of a global conversation about status, identity, and belonging. In many ways, they represent something larger than themselves. They represent the intersection of tradition and change, of old systems and new realities. They represent a monarchy that is trying to adapt while still holding on to its core identity. And that is precisely why this moment feels so significant, because it forces a confrontation with questions that have been building for years. What does it mean to be royal in the modern era? Who gets to decide that? And how flexible can those definitions be without destabilizing the institution itself? This is where the idea of a constitutional dimension begins to emerge. The British monarchy operates in a unique space, one that blends tradition with constitutional function. Many of its rules are not written in strict legal language, but are instead shaped by precedent, by custom, by what has been done before. And that means that when something new happens, something that appears to break from those patterns, it can create uncertainty. Not necessarily a legal crisis in the traditional sense, but a conceptual one, a crisis of understanding, of interpretation, of expectation. If a monarch can effectively redefine how titles are applied, how recognition is granted, then what does that mean for the stability of those traditions going forward? And if those traditions shift too quickly or too visibly, what impact does that have on public trust? At the same time, it is important to recognize that much of this story is still unfolding, still based on reports, interpretations, and reactions. The palace has not fully clarified the situation, and in that absence of clarity, speculation has filled the space. That speculation has grown rapidly, fueled by the global fascination with the royal family and the ongoing narrative surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And perhaps that is part of what makes this moment so powerful. It sits at the intersection of fact and perception, of reality and narrative. It is a story that is being shaped in real time, not just by those directly involved, but by the media, by commentators, by audiences around the world who are watching closely, analyzing every detail, every possibility. For Harry and Meghan, the stakes are deeply personal. This is about their children, about how they are recognized, how they are positioned within a system that they themselves chose to step away from, yet can never fully escape. It is about legacy, about identity, about the balance between independence and connection. For King Charles III, the stakes are equally profound, though in a different way. This is about leadership, about vision, about how he chooses to shape the monarchy during a time of transition. It is about balancing tradition with change, authority with sensitivity, public expectation with private reality. And for the monarchy itself, this may be one of those moments that defines an era, not because of a single decision, but because of what that decision represents, because of the questions it raises, the conversations it sparks, the lines it draws. What began as a report about passports has now become something far more complex, far more consequential. It has become a lens through which the world is examining the monarchy, its values, its direction, its future. And as this story continues to develop, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. This is not just about HRH titles. It is not just about documents or designations. It is about something deeper, something more fundamental. It is about who belongs, who decides, and how far an institution rooted in centuries of tradition can evolve before it begins to redefine itself entirely. And if these tensions continue to grow, if clarity does not come, if positions harden rather than soften, then this moment may be remembered not as a passing controversy, but as the point where a private family conflict became a public test of the monarchy's future. Because in the end, the real question is not just whether Archie and Lilibet receive HRH passports. The real question is what that decision says about the monarchy they are born into and the one it is becoming. As the controversy surrounding King Charles III and the reported refusal to grant HRH designated passports to Prince Archie of Sussex and Princess Lilibet of Sussex continues to intensify, a deeper and more complex narrative is beginning to emerge, one that stretches far beyond a single decision and into the very foundations of royal authority, precedent, and control. What initially appeared to be a symbolic disagreement is now being examined through a far more serious lens, with experts, insiders, and royal observers questioning whether this moment could mark a long-term shift in how the monarchy defines itself in the modern age. Behind the palace walls, where tradition and protocol govern nearly every aspect of royal life, decisions like these are rarely made in isolation. Every title carries historical weight. Every designation reflects centuries of carefully constructed hierarchy, and every deviation from precedent has the potential to create ripple effects that extend far beyond the individuals directly involved. This is precisely why the alleged HRH passport refusal has struck such a nerve. It is not simply about what Archie and Lilibet are called, but about what their status represents within a system that has long relied on clarity and continuity to maintain its legitimacy. For generations, royal titles have followed relatively predictable patterns, shaped by lineage, proximity to the throne, and established tradition. While adjustments have been made over time, they have typically been introduced gradually, often with clear explanations designed to preserve public confidence. But in this case, the perceived ambiguity surrounding the decision is what has fueled speculation. Without a definitive statement clarifying the reasoning, the narrative has been left open to interpretation, and in that vacuum, multiple theories have begun to take hold. One of the most widely discussed possibilities is that this situation reflects a broader effort by King Charles III to assert a more controlled and streamlined vision of the monarchy, one in which titles are not automatically extended, but instead carefully managed. This idea aligns with long-standing discussions about reducing the number of senior royals and focusing public attention on a smaller core group. In theory, such an approach could strengthen the institution by making it more efficient and more aligned with contemporary expectations. However, when applied in practice, especially in a case involving direct grandchildren of the monarch, it becomes far more controversial. Because at the heart of this issue lies a fundamental tension between tradition and transformation. On one hand, there is a desire to modernize, to adapt, to ensure that the monarchy remains relevant in a rapidly changing world. On the other hand, there is an equally powerful need to maintain continuity, to honor the expectations and structures that have defined the institution for generations. When those two forces come into conflict, the result is often uncertainty, and it is within that uncertainty that the current crisis is taking shape. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the implications of this situation are both deeply personal and strategically significant. As parents, the question of how their children are recognized is inevitably tied to issues of identity, belonging, and future opportunity. But as public figures who have already navigated a highly visible and often contentious relationship with the monarchy, they are also acutely aware of how this moment will be perceived on a global stage. Every decision they make in response, whether to speak out, remain silent, or engage behind the scenes, will carry consequences not only for their family, but for their broader narrative. And that narrative, already shaped by years of media scrutiny and public debate, is once again being thrust into the spotlight. Supporters of the Sussexes argue that this situation reinforces long-standing concerns about fairness and inclusion within the royal system, pointing to what they perceive as inconsistencies in how titles and recognition are applied. Critics, however, suggest that the couple's decision to step back from royal duties inevitably altered their position within the institution, and that the current controversy is a natural extension of that shift. Between these competing perspectives lies a complex and emotionally charged reality, one that defies simple explanation. Meanwhile, within the broader framework of the monarchy, this situation is prompting renewed discussion about the nature of royal authority itself. While the monarch holds significant influence over titles and honors, that authority is not exercised in a vacuum. It exists within a network of advisors, traditions, and public expectations that collectively shape how decisions are made and understood. When a decision appears to challenge established norms, it raises important questions about where the boundaries of that authority lie, and how flexible those boundaries can be without undermining the institution's stability. This is where the concept of a constitutional dimension becomes particularly relevant. Although the monarchy operates largely within the realm of tradition rather than codified law, its actions still carry constitutional significance, especially when they intersect with issues of national identity and international representation. If the handling of titles and recognition begins to diverge too sharply from established precedent, it could create a sense of unpredictability that complicates the monarchy's role both at home and abroad. In this sense, the current controversy is not just a family matter, but a moment that touches on the broader relationship between the crown and the system it represents. Adding to the complexity is the role of global perception. In an era defined by instant communication and widespread media coverage, royal decisions are no longer confined to domestic audiences. They are analyzed, debated, and interpreted by millions of people around the world, each bringing their own perspectives and expectations. For many, the story of Archie and Lilibet resonates not just as a royal issue, but as a human one, raising questions about fairness, identity, and the treatment of children within powerful institutions. This global dimension amplifies the stakes, making it even more important for the monarchy to navigate the situation with clarity and care. At the same time, there is an undeniable element of unpredictability in how this story may unfold. The absence of clear, authoritative communication leaves room for multiple outcomes, each with its own set of implications. A formal clarification from the palace could help to stabilize the narrative, providing context and reducing speculation. Alternatively, continued silence could allow the story to evolve in more dramatic directions, shaped increasingly by external interpretation rather than internal explanation. In the most extreme scenario, the situation could escalate further, prompting more direct responses from those involved and potentially deepening existing divisions. For King Charles III, the challenge is particularly delicate. As monarch, he must balance a wide range of responsibilities, from upholding tradition to guiding the institution through a period of significant change. Every decision he makes is scrutinized not only for its immediate impact, but for what it reveals about his broader vision for the monarchy. In this context, the HRH passport controversy becomes more than a single issue. It becomes a reflection of his leadership style, his priorities, and his approach to managing one of the most complex family institutions in the world. For the Sussexes, the path forward is equally uncertain. Their relationship with the monarchy has already undergone profound transformation, shifting from active participation to a more distant and independent role. Yet moments like this demonstrate that the connection, both personal and institutional, remains deeply intertwined. How they choose to navigate this latest development will likely influence not only their own future, but also the evolving narrative surrounding their place within the royal story. And at the center of it all remain Archie and Lilibet, two children whose lives are being shaped by forces far beyond their control. In many ways, they have become symbols of a broader conversation about what the monarchy represents in the 21st century. Their situation highlights the challenges of reconciling tradition with change, of balancing personal relationships with institutional demands, and of defining identity within a system that is itself in transition. As this story continues to unfold, it is becoming increasingly clear that its significance lies not just in the details of passports or titles, but in the larger questions it raises. Questions about authority, about fairness, about the future direction of one of the world's oldest institutions. Whether those questions lead to resolution or further conflict remains to be seen, but what is certain is that this moment has captured global attention in a way that few royal stories ever do. Because ultimately, this is not just a story about what has happened, but about what it means. It is about how decisions are made, how they are interpreted, and how they shape the narrative of one that has long stood as a symbol of continuity in a changing world. And if the current trajectory continues, this controversy may well be remembered as more than a temporary dispute. It may be seen as a defining chapter in the ongoing evolution of the monarchy, a moment when the balance between tradition and transformation was tested in a way that could leave a lasting impact for generations to come. It may be seen as a defining chapter in the ongoing evolution of the monarchy, a moment when the balance between tradition and transformation was tested in a way that could leave a lasting impact for generations to come.